as good as you are at what you do, guess what? The marketplace really doesn't care, does it? You will be asked to run faster and further than you've ever run before. Past success proves that we were right once. Your ability to quickly change and adapt in helping your company quickly change and adapt is the difference between excellence and irrelevance. And I know it's crazy out there, but here's the thing. The crazy is not the problem. You see, the real problem is we all exist in this Venn diagram, and we're right in the center of intense unpredictability, ongoing uncertainty, extreme complexity, and continuous change. And in that spot is where leaders have to grow and flourish to lead your team from where you are right now to where you need to be and want to be in the future. For over 25 years, I've done basically one thing, and that's help leaders and organizations navigate change and build the culture they need to deliver positive results in the face of uncertainty. You've already figured it out. I work both in person and virtually, and I've been doing both for years. So how we work together doesn't really matter. What does matter is your organization's ability to flourish in a dramatically different environment that is full of uncertainty, change, and opportunity. When I got married, my wife said to me, "Randy, I'll never ask you to change." And I thought, cool. She then went on to say, "I do expect that you'll continually adapt." Couple, you're going to write that one down, aren't you? Unless something happens to cause a total meltdown, the pace of change is as slow as it will ever be in your lifetime. And that means the potential for disruption is everywhere. Change doesn't fail because of bad models. It fails because of faulty leadership. Change doesn't happen because of intellectual understanding. It happens because we are emotionally ready to change. That's the job of leadership. Because people change typically for one of two reasons. Crisis pushes us to change, or opportunity pulls us to change. Crisis, if we wait on crisis, we're waiting too late. Our job is to create that opportunity that connects with people and brings them with us.
3 years later, this year we hit the Inc. 5000 top fastest growing companies in the U.S. And it was absolute gold for our company. So thank you, Randy.
Randy did a fantastic job inspiring us to be true leaders. I mean, he went just beyond your typical, this is what a leader does, but he helped us to understand how a leader works, what are the core characteristics of a leader, and I think everyone came away inspired to be a leader in whatever position they find themselves.
All this means that your business doesn't really have a disruption problem. What you have is a nimble culture problem. Culture is how we truly believe, and it becomes our habit. And the news is the culture always wins. Peter Drucker said some years ago, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast or lunch," whichever one you happen to read. I happen to believe in today's world, culture eats everything for breakfast. A great process with a mediocre culture, the culture will win. A mediocre process with a great culture, people will find a way to figure it out. Isn't that true? You can drop your hands now. You guys are enjoying this way too much. Person B, what did I tell you to do? Nothing, but what did we do? We resisted. You see, here's the thing. A lot of the resistance that you have to change is our fault. Now think about that model that I gave you. Choice, where you put your focus. But see, in that face of resistance, we don't put our focus there. We put our focus on, we got to push back. We make a different choice. Then we take a different action. And when that happens, it creates the habit. And all of a sudden, our habits define our culture. That's the way it works. And I want you to think about the future. The perspective isn't responding to crisis. The perspective is dealing with opportunity. What are you going to do today that will guarantee your success tomorrow? Now, my goal today is to make your brain hurt at least a little. And that really shouldn't be too difficult since I'm the last presenter of a stellar lineup. But we know that the mind stretched and pulled by the power and potential of a big idea never fully returns to its original shape. So today I want you to join me on a journey to stretch our minds about leadership. And I'll warn you up front, the ideas might not fit neatly into the models that we've all known or grown up with. And that really is okay, because if an idea doesn't sound at least a little strange to us, then it really isn't that different. I believe we'd all agree that the goal of leadership hasn't changed. It is and always has been to influence the actions and outcomes of others to deliver positive results. And I think we'd also agree that the context and an environment in which we do that work today is different, certainly than the recent past, and it continues to change. David Foster Wallace told this story at a commencement address a few years back. Two young fish were swimming along and encountered an old fish. Now, the old fish swims up to them and says, "How's the water?" The two young fish swim on their way, and then one of them says to the other, "What the hell is water?" Well, the water today is complexity and uncertainty. And the big idea is the way that we've traditionally thought about and taught leadership doesn't fit for today's world and today's water. Back in March of 2020, just a couple of weeks into the pandemic, I was a guest on a podcast, and the host said, "So Randy, you're the change and disruption guy. When do we return back to normal?" My instinctive response in the moment was, we won't and they won't. There is no more new normal. There's only a new next. It was one of those moments, I don't know if you've had them or not, where you listen to the words coming out of your mouth and you think, wow, that's pretty good. I should write that down. And then the chat on his feed blew up and everyone sort of said in a very positive way, that's it, that's right, that's what we're facing. This is a new next. So I did what any content creator would do. I called my IP lawyer as soon as we were done and trademarked New Next. But you see, the new next isn't about the pandemic. It's about realizing that we are at an inflection point where there are so many changes happening and factors that are out of our control that we live and operate in a world of perpetual new next moments. The pandemic reminded us that catastrophic events can happen at any time and there's not anything we can do about it. Well, that's not new. Anyone who's lived through a hurricane or a tornado or like me in the Texas snowmageddon of 2021 knows that that stuff happens. In the last 9 months, however, artificial intelligence and Chat GPT have made technology a big focus for us all. But really, any of these factors can force us into a new next at any moment. And in that moment, the leader's job is still the same. To get your teams working together to continue to deliver positive results, to change more quickly, to be more responsive and resilient, and bring people with you to have them feel included as partners. I began challenging my own thinking about leadership right after Thanksgiving in 2022, because I sensed that the old ways we were thinking and teaching leadership no longer worked as well as we needed today. Now, I don't know, maybe you felt the same thing, that those old ways just don't seem to be 100% there. Well, I'll ask you to stay with me here because here's where it starts to head off in maybe a little different direction. The way we think about leadership is rooted in order. It's the 6 steps, the 4 levels. It's very linear, and it's almost mechanical in its approach. Well, I grew up in that thinking. I've been doing this work for a long time. All this gray hair you're seeing, it isn't painted in for effect. I'm not trying to look older. But this is how leadership and organization development have been taught ever since I've been in this business. And I came to the conclusion that it's largely unproductive for today because we're swimming in different water. So I went on a search, and several days of just head down searching, and that search led me to these 4 men: Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Max Planck, and Leonard Susskind. Now, Einstein's general theory of relativity taught us about gravity and the space-time continue. It explains how big things work in our world. Bohr and Planck, on the other hand, were leaders in quantum theory, and they explained how small things like particles and waves work. Now, more important, they showed us that changes in small things have an enormous influence on how big things happen. Now, the idea became popularized in the butterfly effect. Big things and small things have an impact on each other and on the world as we know it. That leads us to Leonard Susskind, a Stanford professor who, along with others, combined the big and the small into string theory, which postulates that, for now at least, there are 10 dimensions of reality that operate simultaneously, and they're all interconnected. A change in one affects a change in all of them, and together they change the whole. It's the way the world works, and it's the way organizations and teams work too. Big things like how we're organized and how we operate, as well as how we do change and transformation, have an impact on small things like a leader's individual credibility and interpersonal relationships. The best leaders, I believe today, operate in dimensions too. Not steps, not levels, but dimensions. As of today, there are 6 that have been identified, and that could change. For instance, it's too early to tell if the rise of AI and robotics will require other dimensions in the future. But as of right now, 3 of the dimensions focus on small things like personal leadership, interpersonal leadership, and to a large degree, developmental leadership, because it happens almost on a one-to-one basis. 3 also focus on big, or at least bigger things like organizational leadership and how we operate, change leadership, and transformational leadership. There are people who talk about change and transformation interchangeably, and I see them as different. We can change without transforming, but we can't transform without fundamental changes to multiple parts of the business, and that really distinguishes the two. But in the end, the ability to master all 6 of the dimensions is the ultimate secret to building and sustaining a culture that can flourish in the uncertainty and complexity of today. It's also the secret to making sure that uncertainty doesn't devolve into chaos. You see, chaos is the absence of all order. And we typically think of crisis and chaos is interchangeable, but that isn't necessarily true. Likewise, uncertainty doesn't have to lead to chaos if, and this is a big if, the leader successfully utilizes all 6 dimensions simultaneously to keep the team focused, engaged, and trusting the direction where we're headed. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, okay, that's interesting, and it's probably a little weird. And remember, I told you that the goal is to make your brain hurt a little bit, so hopefully that's happening right now. And you might also be thinking, so what? I have products to build, I have things to ship, I have poor performers that need coaching, I need teams that fight each other all the time, I'm dealing with high turnover, quality problems, and the list keeps going and going and going. And you might be even saying to yourself, I don't have time to think about dimensions. Well, I get it. The day-to-day operational and leadership challenges we all face are real. But remember, the water has changed. To make it through a world of perpetual new next moments, we'll have to execute today, lay the foundation for tomorrow, and bring people with us on a journey where we can't clearly see how to get to the end point. Now, this is the point where we expect presentations to include specific prescriptive action items. And, we want our list of steps or our levels to go through, and we can't help it. We're sort of thinking that way as humans, and that's the way we've always done it. And trust me, I want to give them to you. I really do want to give them to you. But you see, that sort of defeats the premise, doesn't it? Because the growth and change and transformation we need and want doesn't occur in preordained steps. There are, however, some suggestions I can make. And you can think about these, work on them, chew on them, and then use them as you wish. Here's the first one. I think we all have to become comfortable with uncertainty to prevent chaos. You see, we want as leaders to have the answers. We'll need to be better, however, at having the right questions to ask. You see, it's a truth that I've learned in my life that the quality of the answers I receive are in direct proportion to the quality of the questions I ask. Now, on top of that, we have to be 100% aligned on purpose. We have to be consistent and aligned on those choices that we need to make every day that make us into a nimble team. We'll have to be curious, and we'll have to rely on the strength of our relationships to sustain and pull us through, because uncertainty requires us to lean on others. The second idea is this: be aware. The way you act and perform in one dimension of leadership affects the influence you have in all dimensions of leadership. I think we have to keep that in mind in every situation and interaction. Now, Rebecca told us earlier that Mary Poppins received the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1964. Well, in 2022, the Academy Award went to a movie titled Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But when I Googled the description for this movie, I found this: when an interdimensional rupture unravels reality, an unlikely hero must channel her newfound powers to fight bizarre and bewildering dangers from the multiverse as the fate of the world hangs in the balance. Well, guess what, folks? That's leadership in the new next. Using the powers of every dimension in every situation all the time. It's how we stretch and grow our minds and swim in the new water.
In here, it's great to be with you today. One of the questions that I have been asked a lot recently is, what's the impact of artificial intelligence going to be on business, on my career, on my profession? And let's get this out of the way real quick. I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence. I'm not an expert in ChatGPT. There are a lot of other people out there who can show you how to use that tool. But we're going to look at it, and I look at it through the standpoint of what does it mean for change. And the reason I'm weighing in today is just earlier, a couple of days ago this week, I was with a state society of CPAs talking about the impact of artificial intelligence on the CPA profession. And I want to share with you just a couple of quick ideas that I shared with them to help you think about how artificial intelligence might affect your business, might affect your career, and also start thinking about what you can do to make sure that you're ready once it starts showing up and appearing on your career. So here's what we know for sure. and that what we know for sure is everyone is 100% sure that AI is going to affect how we work. I think everyone we talk with realizes there's that potential for AI to have an impact and potentially disrupt or certainly augment and support everything that we do. But no one is 100% sure of how that's going to happen or when it's going to happen or even at what level it's going to happen. But here's what we can tell from everything that we're seeing right now is that artificial intelligence as it is today, now that's the key point, as it is today, will be able to handle many or perhaps even most repetitive tasks, and it will put jobs at risk. And in the process, it could also minimize the impact of a shrinking number of professionals or people to do the job. So let's break that down for just a moment. It will handle many or most repetitive tasks. By the way, technology has always done that. This isn't new. If you go back all the way to, the Wild West, the telegraph put Pony Express out of business, and it could handle that repetitive task much quicker and much better and faster than guys riding on horses from town to town to town. And yet I'm sure that there were people, Pony Express riders, who sat in the bar after a long ride and said, man, I wonder if that whole telegraph thing is going to make a difference or not. Well, it turns out it did, and it put those jobs at risk. Likewise, though, people thought that the ATM machines would put banks and bank tellers out of business. And yet 10 years later, the number of bank tellers was actually even higher because banks used that technology to then expand out of fewer central locations to more decentralized locations. So there is a chance that artificial intelligence is going to put jobs at risk. We don't know 100% though if that's going to mean other jobs pop up in their place or if it will be like the Pony Express where jobs literally go away. But this isn't a new factor that we're experiencing right now. It's just the latest new factor. It's the latest new next, if you will. So as we're thinking about this, it's important to understand that hype doesn't equal intensity of adoption. There's a lot of hype right now around artificial intelligence, and certain tools like ChatGPT are getting a lot of use. But overall, it's hard to say exactly how quick the adoption is going to be. And I'll take us back to autonomous vehicles. Just a few years back, autonomous vehicles were all the rage. That's all people were talking about. And the idea was that we were going to have autonomous vehicles everywhere within just a few years. Well, it turns out it didn't quite work that way. And it's because of this thing called the theory of the adjacent possible. So it wasn't the fact that we couldn't build sensors in cars. I mean, we know how to do that. We've had airplanes that can fly themselves for years, perhaps even decades. That's really what a drone is, an autonomous airplane. At the same time, other factors didn't support autonomous commercial vehicles or commercial airlines. So it's going to be the same way with commercial vehicles. It's not that we can't build the sensors. It's going to be the network and the coverage of that is going to make them impractical, at least on a local basis right now. It's going to be the same with artificial intelligence, I think, in that there's some things that will have to happen in order for artificial intelligence to really, really grow. And so in thinking about this, it's really important that the words of Bill Gates stay in top of mind. And Gates said that we always overestimate the change we think will occur in the next 2 years, but we underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. So now you need to be watching right now about where change is going and where this is happening. And I want to share with you 2 curves that will allow you to do it. The first is the adoption curve. And you've seen this before. The vertical axis is levels of adoption. The horizontal one is over time. And clearly, if you think about where we are right now, we are at the, somewhere we've passed proof of concept. We're probably in the early adoption phase. There's going to be more mainstream adoption of what we of what we have available right now. But as new AI tools become available, they'll have to go through proof of concept, early adoption, maturation, and sooner or later they will top out. So one thing to watch for right now is how quickly people start adopting AI tools. For example, just because you can use them doesn't mean that your clients will be able to use them. Sort of like social media. I'm not a particularly big TikTok person, not because I don't appreciate TikTok. I like to watch it, but at the same time, my clients have not adopted that as a method of communication via social media. They're more likely to look on where I'm posting this, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, some of those types of places. So again, it's going to be not just your adoption or not just the availability. If you're in the B2B world, it will also be the adoption of your clients that will help drive how this is going to affect you. The second curve to watch for is the innovation curve. And innovation curve, again, if you look at the vertical axis, looks at the viability of an innovation. Across the horizontal axis, it's the capacity of the innovation over time. And at the top, you notice there's this thing called technology limit. By the way, my phone rang. I'll just hang it up real quick. It's the technology limit. In other words, when did we reach the limit on the technology? Now, viability comes from a combination of lowering costs and increasing quality. So if you think about that right now with the Apple headset that just came out for virtual and augmented reality, huge jump in quality apparently. I haven't seen it yet, but everyone thinks it's huge. Still, cost is pretty high and fairly prohibitive, but we know that the cost will drop. It's going to be the same with AI, and especially as you start combining AI with robotics and creating potentially an entire unique species of people over time. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch how cost drops and how quality increases. I know ChatGPT is sort of free right now, but just realize that's a very minimum. Artificial intelligence overall will have a cost quality trade-off. And again, where are we right now? We're past proof of concept. We're sort of into the momentum and expansion. It'll be interesting to see how maturity develops and when we reach maturity with artificial intelligence, even as we know it today. By the way, some of that could be limited not by the technology, but by the control on the technology. So those are two things that you and I need to watch. And it does bring to mind this, okay, that's cool information. What do we do? Well, the whole thing of this, like any other technology, is how do you use technology in your business for change? And when it comes to change, we all have 4 choices. Level 1 is the easy one. It's adapt. It's what my wife said to me when she said, Randy, I'll never ask you to change. When we got married, she said, I'll never ask you to change, but I do expect you'll continually adapt. We do that. Level 2, though, is anticipate. It's really important that you adapt and adopt what you know works right now, but that you start hitting level 2 change, and that's anticipating what's going to come out there and anticipating it through these 4 filters. Will it make me faster? Will it make my product or service better? Will it allow me to deliver what I deliver cheaper for both me and my customer? And will it create a better customer experience, which is sort of friendlier? Now, level 3 is pursue. And there are some things that we should absolutely be pursuing around artificial intelligence right now, if it allows you to be faster, better, cheaper, friendlier with customers. So how about level 4? Well, level 4 really isn't a 4th level. It's really a 0 level. And that is, there's some changes out there, including what's happening with artificial intelligence, that you might choose in your business to ignore or even flee based upon what it is and how it fits with your values, your customers, your market, and how's it going to help you in your business. I continue to go back to the thing that Steve Jobs said. Of all the things that they created at Apple that they were proud of, some of the things he was most proud of were the things they decided not to do. There is, in fact, sometimes an advantage of ignoring change until you get a proof of concept, or maybe even forever, in order to be more effective. So I hope those ideas were useful. They jogged your memory a little bit and jogged your mind a little bit, because the question of artificial intelligence isn't what will it do. The question is, what will it change for us, for how we work, and for how we interact with our customers.